What comes to mind when you think about December? Is it the smell of this? The sight of this? Maybe whatever sound this stupid thing makes. Not me, though. My December smells like crab guts. It's filled with the disappointing sound of swings and misses. And it makes me think of wrasses. You know wrasses, right? There's like a million different species of them all over the world, some of which you've seen at the aquarium or maybe the pet store while picking out a Christmas gerbil. They're often cute, colorful. Like, look at this one. God, that's cute. But not the wrasses I'm after. They're pretty fucking ugly. Still, anglers throughout the Northeast go nuts for them because they take skill to catch, they pull hard, and they're one of the finest eating fish in the Atlantic. They also offer one last hurrah before the boat gets winterized. And even the chance to join the 10-plus pound club, provided you've got a decent net man. Missed him. I'm Joe Cermele, and this is Fishing on the B-Side. The wrasse we're after on this frosty morning is the tautog, also known as blackfish, but usually just shortened to tog.
It's cold. It's below 30.
And the man who's going to put us on them is my bud, Captain Brett Taylor.
I think we should go right for tog.
Let's do it.
And then what we'll do is once it gets a little gnarly out there, then we'll try for bass along the beach.
Now, any togger will tell you this game is a lot more fun with a group of buddies, which is why I also invited my dear friend Mike Sudol. Mike is an artist whose work you've seen in countless fishing publications and who also happened to draw our badass MeatEater fishing sticker, so I kind of owed him a trip. Is it fair to say that a tog is your absolute favorite fish to draw? They're poetry in motion, Mike. Sheer beauty.
They are gorgeous. Actually, think about it. I don't think I've ever drawn a tog before.
All three of us have been part of the tog cult since we were kids, and it's a large cult with members from southern Maine to northern Virginia. Mike grew up chasing these fish on the jetties in North Jersey, but Brett and I have been getting after them out of central Jersey's Barnegat Inlet for about as long as we can remember, throwing countless outbound nods to the state's most iconic coastal landmark. Barnegat Light, locally known as Old Barney, keeps watch over the north end of Long Beach Island, one of the fishiest places in Jersey. This time of year, you won't find much going on there, and most of the small boats you see breaking the inlet now are togging, because while you can legally target these fish almost year-round, the season with the highest bag limits doesn't open until mid-November and ends on January 1st. Like most members of the wrasse family, tog live in and around hard structure, like wrecks and rock piles. And lucky for us, considering how cold it is, we only have to steam for a few miles before we reach one of the many artificial reefs off the Jersey coast.
We're about 200 feet from this wreck, so I'm going to pull up on it. I'm going to get the trolling motor, get that trolling motor deployed, and we're ready to start getting some tog here.
On the menu today are white-legger crabs, which we'll hack into halves and quarters and send to the wreck 30 feet below with a combo of heavy lead weights and heavy tog jigs. Tog actually go dormant at night and effectively sleep, so during the first drop on any early morning tog quest, part of the fun is seeing who will find the one that's ready for breakfast first. El Capitan drew first blood with a fish that just squeaked past the 15-inch mark, which meant we were at least going home with one tog. Mike and I, on the other hand, weren't contributing much early on.
Yeah, little guy.
Tiny togger for Mike.
Oh, little toglet.
We can keep 5 tog each, and it's hard not to hope for a limit because those dull gray bodies, rubbery cartoon-like lips, and goofy snaggle teeth don't reflect their flavor. Their diet does that, and what they primarily feed on are crabs, clams, mussels, and shrimp.
There he is. Oh yeah, dude. That one's working it. That one's working it.
Ironically, what they feed on, how they feed on it, and where they find it are all part of what makes catching togs so challenging.
Once they size up like that, they dig. And if you do not get them away from that structure quick, they will rock you up. It's kind of hairy because I'm using pretty light stuff.
Extracting a tog from the crevice-filled, leader-shredding structure below is one challenge, but to get there, you've got to stick one first, which takes practice and the touch, as toggers like to say. When a tog eats, it extends those big lips and teeth and just crunches a bait. It doesn't inhale it, not right away. It just crunches, which feels like a light bite, or scratching, to use another common togging term. The trick is knowing when the fish has the bait in its mouth and not just in the tip of its lips. And it's been explained in articles and videos a million times in a million ways. Swing on the second thumb. Wait for the first solid tug. Count backwards from 9 and scratch your ass. But really, if you ask me, it's something you have to experience to understand. And no matter how long you've been doing it, this will happen.
There's a fish. There you go.
And you'll end up with a lot of bare, cleaned off hooks.
So, I'm kind of getting my ass handed to me a little bit right now.
Now, should you ever find yourself on a tog trip as a rookie, you can lessen your chances of having your ass handed to you if you have a basic understanding of the 2 most popular tog bait delivery methods. And wouldn't you know it, that's exactly what I'm about to break down in our highly informative Talkin' Shit segment. The shit that we're going to talk about today is the difference between tog rigs and tog jigs, which is sort of a new school versus old school argument, akin to do I power fish with a big old jig and pork rind, or light line finesse fish for largemouth bass. In its simplest form, the traditional tog rig features a short dropper loop for your hook, right above the weight so your bait sits right on the bottom. And they're usually tied with 40 to 60 pound leader material to provide abrasion resistance against all that wreck and rock structure that you're dropping into. Now historically, tog rigs were delivered on pretty stout rods, both so that you could muscle fish out of the cover once you stuck that hook in those rubber lips, and also because you needed a heavier rod to deliver the 6 to 8 ounce leads that were needed for deep water tog fishing. And then, about 10 years ago, give or take, the tog jig entered the scene. And these are really nothing more than specialized jig heads that are stocky and extra heavy and painted up to look like tog forage, like crabs, mussels. They can also be painted to look like rocks and bottom structure. It was the tog jig that finally gave light spinning and bait casting combos, coupled with modern skinny braid, a home on tog boats. In fact, that's exactly the kind of tackle that these jigs are designed to be presented on. By using lighter outfits and ditching the super heavy bank sinkers, you now have a more direct connection to your bait, which allows you to detect those subtle bites a little bit quicker. Now, despite the ever-growing popularity of tog jigs, I still consider myself a rig man, mostly because I've just been fishing them for so much longer and have more confidence in my ability to connect with a rig. But, as you've been seeing, I'm certainly not opposed to switching back and forth, and will absolutely agree that there are times when a jig will outfish a traditional rig. And wouldn't you know it, in super calm conditions with very little current, like we have today, happens to be one of them. However, if you gotta get a crab down in 40 feet of water in a ripping current, I would much rather have the satisfaction of knowing my 8 ounce chunk of lead is gonna get it where it needs to go, than worry about all this finesse shit and being able to feel the bite better when it actually happens. Tog bites tend to come in waves, and I ain't gonna lie, the afternoon wave got pretty stupid. I mean, shit, even Mikey got his groove back, and before we knew it, that cooler was getting pretty full. Our average fish measure between 17 and 20 inches, but if you're wondering how big these things get, well, here's the current world record. It was caught in 2015 and tipped the scales to 28.8 pounds. All toggers dream of catching a teener or 20-plus pounder, but 10 pounds is the starting weight of a trophy class fish. I'm still stuck at 9.5 pounds, and Brett, well, he just stuck one that could go the full distance. Oh, and cue that completely Guggen amateur net stab in 3, 2, 1.
Yowza.
It's about it's a little over 10.
And there it is, the coveted double-digit Tautog. It's one of many for Brett over the years, and you might assume it's destined for a hot bath in lemon and butter like the rest of them, but you'd be wrong. Tautog are one of the slowest growing fish in the ocean. In fact, a 20-pounder can be 100 years old. Strong chance Brett's 10-pounder is at least 30 years old, but age is not the only reason he encourages his clients to set the tanks free.
Fish are opposite of humans. Like, they get more productive
Right.
as they age. If you want to have the fisheries around here for a while, you know, if it's a 10, 15, 20-pound female,
Yeah.
put it back.
By 2 o'clock, we're loaded down with roaster-sized Tautog and headed for the barn. But before we reach the barn, we can't help but take a quick swing at the late-season resident stripers, chowing in the shadow of Old Barney. These little fellas are too small to keep, but still, it was a nice pre-Christmas bonus, as was the near 60-degree sunshine that greeted us back at the dock.
It's weird to come back and have the feelings in your fingers and your toes.
Let's get your favorite fingers. You can go and start drawing me a Tautog. How many more trips do you have for the season, man?
I'm going to run, hopefully, till Christmas. My last trip is at the 20th right now. Yeah, usually my wife has had enough by Christmas.
As Brett made quick work of our Tautog with a weathered fillet knife that had been sharpened so much it was like a razor wire, we soaked in as much of that sun as we could. Savored it, really, because in just a few days, it would be gone. Now, Tautog freezes well, and you can do almost anything with it. But aside from all those fillets, I also grabbed me a couple racks. Nothing says summer to me like mahi ceviche, which is how we kicked off B-side fishing, but nothing says winter like Tautog chowder. The amount of fat and collagen in Tautog heads and bones makes a superb stock for the base. It's also a slow process, a labor of love that makes you feel less bad about not being fishing on a Saturday and less depressed because it's just f***ing winter now. But when it all comes together, when stock is becoming chowder and you drop a few of those delicious fillets in, you know you've made something heartwarming, perhaps worthy of sharing with close friends in the spirit of the holidays. Or not.
That is the gift that keeps on giving for 3 to 4 long, cold winter days, but just for me and my family, because I don't share this shit with anybody.